you guys. I am so excited. But before I nerd out, let me tell you who I am. So my name is Sarah Lacko, and this is the Inspired Vida Show. I've always been fascinated about people's stories, their hardships, and how they've overcome those hardships, turning their pain into their power and sometimes their passion, the true underdogs. We get to talk to these people, pick their brains, and learn from them and see how they overcame and their successes from that. I'm super excited about today's guest. But before I super crazy nerd out, today's episode is sponsored by the Badass Backpacking Babes. It's an online course teaching women how to start learning how to backpack. So it's for the beginner backpacker. We empower women through nature, embracing ourselves within the wild, and rewilding ourselves. We're taking back our power, our wild, our confidence, and our badassness. You can sign up for that course today. There are pre-sales happening, but by the time this comes out, it actually will be over, but there are still great prices. We teach how to start backpacking, but then we also implement it with a very cool retreat where we will actually have a guest bomb photographer. She's well known in the community. She'll be coming with us and getting to document and show our journey and also take individual empowering pictures of the retreaters. And also we'll be doing yoga on a mountain. No big deal, but big deal. So I'm very excited about it. If you want more information, you can click the link below in the details, and I hope you come with us. If backpacking is something you wanted to do, it's time to do it now. So anyways, enough about that. So we have a very cool guest today, and you're going to find out why I'm nerding out, because I am obsessed with backpacking, obviously, and nature, obviously. So please, friend, introduce yourself, and please tell us what you do and who you are.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So my name is also Sarah. I currently work on the business side of medical devices, and my company's mission is to cure stroke. And so we make products that allow neurosurgeons to perform less invasive neurosurgery. I'm a fully remote employee, and I work out of my home office here in Colorado.
Very cool. Yeah, so we're pretty close because I'm in Wyoming. Mm-hmm. We might have to hike together one day.
Yeah,
so
it's not
it's not far at all. I would love that. Okay, I'm gonna stop. So tell us, Sarah, about yourself, like growing up. What did your childhood look like?
Yeah, I grew up in Wyoming also. I was super studious, a bit of a nerd. My parents were actually way more outdoorsy than I ever was, and they would drag me camping and hiking with a huge emphasis on drag. I didn't really love being outside because, bugs and weather. But it really wasn't until college that I got into and really fell in love with the outdoors. After my freshman year of college, I had the opportunity to work and live in Yellowstone National Park for the summer. And this was really where my first interest in hiking and being outdoors started. It was such an amazing experience to be able to live and work in a national park for the entire summer. And Yellowstone in particular is just such a, magically weird place that it's hard to be there and not fall in love with exploring it. And so by the time my summer had ended, I'd fallen in love with hiking, and I ended up going on to spend another summer during college working in the park. And that's kind of where I got more interested in backpacking as well. And Yellowstone was just such an excellent training grounds, I guess, for my future. Yellowstone is really remote in a lot of areas. There's a trail in Yellowstone that puts you 20 miles from any road, which is the most remote that you can get in the continental US. And backpacking and I guess just such remoteness, and where you could run into, grizzlies or bison or moose around any corner, just means that you really have to be prepared and know what you're doing. And so this for me was such a good crash course in backpacking in an environment where doing it right really did matter the first time. And so I did have to learn, how to do everything correctly. And then by the time my second summer ended, I was well versed on things like leave no trace principles, how to avoid, negative wildlife encounters, and really how to respect the fragility of ecosystems, because Yellowstone is such a fragile ecosystem. And so that's kind of where I guess the seed was planted for me hiking and backpacking and learning about it. When I graduated college, I was accepted into the Peace Corps, and I spent over 2 years teaching chemistry to high school level students in East Africa. And when I finished the Peace Corps, I decided to hike the Appalachian Trail with two friends that I had met in the Peace Corps. For those of you that don't know, the Appalachian Trail, which I might refer to as AT, it's about a 2,190-mile trail, plus or minus a few miles, depending on the year, that runs from Georgia to Maine.
Okay, so I'm curious, if I love that you were, as a child, like, it's hilarious that you're like dragged to do these outdoor things. So what, like, if it wasn't your interest before, what made you like decide to do that, like decide to work for Yellowstone National Park?
That's a great question. So, I mean, a lot of it stems from my mom. We kind of are two peas in a pod at times. And she actually, when she was in college, went and worked in Yellowstone National Park. She worked in I just forgot, Old Faithful area. And I ended up working in the Canyon area, if you're familiar with the park. But I don't know, she had like talked so highly about it, and I didn't really have anything to do after my freshman year summer, and so I just got it in my mind that I was gonna, like, do it too. And so she kind of inspired that.
Oh, that's cool. I love that. Even though you were like, this isn't really my thing, and you're like, but you still had some form of interest, like some curiosity to see if that really was your thing or not. And obviously it was.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think that, putting yourself out there. I mean, I didn't go necessarily with the goal of like getting into hiking or backpacking. Like, I'd spent time in Yellowstone and it just seemed like a fun, summer camp kind of experience. But when you go, all the people you're around are like very into hiking and backpacking. And so all of a sudden you're like kind of thrown into that culture. And so that was maybe the first time I'd been like really thrown into that culture with people my own age and my peers. And that's kind of where, I mean, I think they helped to probably develop some of my interest in it as well. And then once you start doing it, it's like kind of addicting. So
Super addicting. And I think it's important, like, it's a great lesson too for all of us, that like, if there's something like in the back of your mind that's like, like, I don't know about this, but I'm a little interested by it, like, just try it. Because if you just try that thing, you might love that thing, and that might be your thing. And it's just sometimes we we hold ourselves back from trying really cool things and seeing if it's even something that we like or dig. But once you try it, then I really like this thing, or this thing, it really isn't for me. So I love that you just like jumped in to find out, like, you obviously had that curiosity and you were kind of like, well, maybe, and then you just like full went on into it. And yeah, I think that's really cool. So that's a lesson for all of us. So, okay. So the Appalachian Trail, I mean, that is a long trail. Like you said, 2,000 plus. How many did you say? 2,000?
2,190 approximately. I think it was like 89 point something when we did it, but it changes every year based on trail maintenance. It sometimes increases and decreases.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Yeah, my brother we used to live like in Salisbury, Connecticut. Shout out to Salisbury, Connecticut. If you are doing the Appalachian Trail, you should definitely stop into Salisbury. Shout out to them. Yeah, because we basically lived right where the trail was. So make sure to check them out if you do that. But he used to help maintenance the Appalachian Trail. So I think it's
awesome.
just cool. Yeah. So obviously like that is a super long trip. How many months or how long did that take you to complete?
It took 5 months exactly to the day.
Yeah, that makes sense. To the day?
We started March 16th and we finished August 16th.
Oh, that's cool. Wow. Did you push to make it to the day?
No,
It
that
just happened that
happened.
way?
I mean, I had a wedding I had to get to, and I cut it really close to the wedding. So there was a push at the end. I think I finished on like a Friday, and the wedding was Saturday. And yeah, but so there was
Wow.
definitely like a time limit there at the end, but we weren't like far from being able to do it. It wasn't, we were on schedule for the most part.
That's pretty cool. So we're gonna talk about like as far as like your hardships, with you on the trail and backpacking, because there's definitely highs and lows of backpacking. I mean, regardless if you're doing 2,000 plus miles or you're doing 10 to 20, like there's always, you know, this thing that you're overcoming like within yourself, and you have those highs and those lows as a backpacker. So tell us like right before your low, like where were you like mentally, physically? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so I honestly don't think I was ever fully prepared for what the trail would require of me, both physically and mentally. Even though I loved hiking and backpacking, and at this point I did have quite a few miles under my boots. Um, there's no one on the planet who would like ever describe me as athletic. And part of the reason I think I liked hiking is that it was just like walking. So I didn't feel like it required that much athletic ability. And before the trail, I was just so like stuck on this notion that I would get in shape on the trail, which you 100% do and you 100% will. However, that meant that my like trail prep just was eating a lot of pasta and trying to gain some extra padding for sitting on logs. And so I literally went from being like a completely sedentary person to hiking double-digit miles every day for 5 months. So that was like a really a big transition, and nothing can completely prepare for like just like being on a trail for 5 months. It's a very different experience than just. I mean, it's still backpacking, obviously, but the things you think about and the things you worry about are different than when you just go on like a 5 day backpacking trip in the mountains. And so I'd never done a through hike, and it does look slightly different than the backpacking that I had been used to. And so there was definitely some, adaptation period that I had to go through.
And so you had mentioned that you really hadn't like prepped for it, like physically prepped for it, right?
Nothing besides eating pasta.
Oh man, wow, that's cool. And so like once you started, did you see like maybe I should have, like was there a point where you're like maybe I should have prepped for this, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, if someone was hiking the Appalachian Trail today and they asked me how much they should prep for it, I mean, you're out there for 5 months or however long it takes you, at least probably 4 months, unless you're like crazy fast. And and some people are out there as long as 6 months. Like that's a very like 6 months, I think, is the average time to hike it. And so you do have a lot of time to like build up kind of your stamina for hiking, because really nothing in the world can get you in shape for hiking 20 plus miles a day, like with a big weight on your back, like unless you're actually doing that, like nothing is really going to get you there. So I don't know if I regret not training, because I did eventually get to that level. I probably would have done more like stretching and stuff and just like staying limber, if anything. And yeah, maybe it like in the beginning, like the first few weeks are like really hard, and definitely you could probably avoid some of the pain of the first few weeks if you trained a little bit.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and two, did you maybe start out with like doing a certain mile and then add on to that as you were like basically in the process of conditioning for the Appalachian Trail while you're on it? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, for sure. And that's highly what I would recommend. I don't think they went over like 15 miles for maybe the first month. In a single day. And then once you start like going up into the higher mileages, you kind of stay there. But the first month, I mean, I think the first few days we only walked, I mean, only being relative, but like 10 miles or 13 miles. But I mean, when you think about it, you have the whole day and that's all you have to do. And you can like, if you're in somewhat of an okay shape, you can probably walk 10 miles if you're given the whole day to do it. And so it really wasn't bad at first. And we did like slowly build up mileage. That's definitely true.
Well, and two, like in my backpacking course, talk about like slow and steady wins the race. So it's important, like when you are backpacking, like not to burn yourself out like right in the beginning, because you're trying to take care of your body, you're trying not to have injuries. When you're tired, just like if you're working out and you start to get tired, you get a little like sloppy. And the same goes for like backpacking. When you are like extremely exhausted and extremely tired, like you have to be careful, because that's when injuries can happen, because you have a heavy pack on your back, your legs are getting tired. So it is important to, like, even if you have prepared, to still like build that up, because as Sarah said, like it's something you just can't prepare for unless you're doing like 20 miles a day with your pack on. It's just something you can't prepare for doing like 5 months of it. So slow and steady wins the race. Sometimes we're just like, we want to get there, but yeah, slow and steady, slow and steady. All right, so tell us, like, what on the trail, like where was your low point? Like, talk to us about that, because there's always like multiple low points sometimes, like during, and especially like 5 months, right? So, but like, what was your biggest low point? What did that look like?
Yeah, for sure. So like you kind of alluded to, the trail is full of extreme highs and extreme lows. My personal breaking point came somewhere in Massachusetts. I'd already made it through the cold and the snow and the Smokies. I'd lived days where everything that I owned was completely drenched. I had actively wondered if you could drown while walking in rain because you could barely breathe. And it literally rained almost every day, it felt like, that we hiked. I managed through lightning storms. I'd woken up and put on completely frozen pants. I had been very uncomfortable for a long time by the time that I reached Connecticut, but then the mosquitoes came out and I had been able to deal with so many hardships, but the mosquitoes just like pushed me over the limit. They were everywhere. And when we crossed over into Massachusetts, they got especially bad. I couldn't even like breathe because there was just swarms of mosquitoes. And it was just, for whatever reason, my breaking point. And one day I just remember it was just such a hard day. I couldn't stop for lunch because the mosquitoes would just attack me alive. You just had to keep moving. You had to keep going. And I was just completely miserable. And I remember looking at the map and finding a road, just like, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 miles up the trail. And that was like, it kind of became my goal. And one thing that you'll see in kind of hopefully this is that I'm a pretty goal oriented person. And so I just focused so hard on getting to that road. And normally, on asphalt roads, the mosquitoes, there are like a lot less of them. And so I just pictured lying in the middle of this asphalt road and just having like a small little break from the mosquitoes. And when I finally reached the road, it was like not a road at all. It was just a big trail and there was no mosquito reprieve at all. And I just like broke down. And you have to remember, like, I mean, it seems so silly, but it has just been so much for so long that this was just the moment that I like couldn't take another second. And my hiking partner he had gone ahead of me. He's actually my husband now, but he was waiting for me at the road. And I can get kind of dramatic when things get really low. And I just remember I laid down in the road just like I had pictured myself doing, but I had pictured it to be on asphalt where there would be less mosquitoes. And I just sobbed and I told him to, leave me there to die by the hand of the mosquitoes. I remember saying like, like, the only way you're getting me out of here is if you can call my mom and she can somehow get a helicopter to me because I can't go on. And I was really serious. Like, I was really low. Like, I was not a good moment. And if anyone had come up on me, I'm sure they would have been like, what is this dramatic girl doing? But it was the end of my wits. And after a while I did like calm down, and my hiking partner was able to convince me to like keep going. And I remember night hiking, because we were so behind to get to camp. We just had to find like a good place we could put up our tent, but it was we weren't in a good spot, and so we had a night hike to the camp. And it was like some of the hardest miles of my life. It was maybe only like 2 or 3 miles, and I was just like sobbing, and it was just not a pretty picture. And the next day I got up, and I really wasn't sure if I would keep going. I mean, I had to go at least a little further because I was in the middle of nowhere, but I was like very seriously contemplating quitting at that point. But then that day, I just remember we started finding notes like pretty early in the morning too, from our other hiking partner who we had been separated from for a few weeks. And she had written that she was like going to stay at this cabin, and there were pancakes, and it was just a few miles up the trail. And so finally we got to this shelter, and it's a really cool shelter on the AT for AT hikers. And they actually have a volunteer who comes for the whole summer and makes like kind of manages the shelter. And he made pancakes in the morning, and there was a pond there, and we ended up stopping like many miles early that day. And we just got to hang out at this cabin and we got to reunite with a bunch of our friends, and we got to go swimming in this pond. And it was actually one of my highest moments on the trail. And I think something that if you hike the AT, you hear a lot, people say this a lot, but they say the trail always provides. And I personally saw it a lot in kind of those high highs and those low lows. But this, I think, is a great example of that, where I had literally my lowest moment and one of my highest moments within like a 12-hour period. And it really is like those highs that kind of push you forward, and knowing that tomorrow will be better, I guess. But there were a lot of lows. I do think that people romanticize a little bit like through hiking and stuff. And even myself, like when I look back, I remember the good times, but it is so hard, and it's really hard on your body. You would imagine, I mean, even though I definitely got in shape as I hiked, your body never fully, or at least my body never fully adapted to hiking that far every day with such a weight on my back. When I took off my hiking boots, I would literally limp everywhere. Like the second I put on my camp shoes, I was like just limping. And people would look at me so funny when like we were in towns trying to do laundry or get food, and we'd say like, oh, we're hiking the AT, and they'd see how I was walking and they'd be like, how are you hiking? But it was really funny. Like every morning when I put on my hiking boots, like the first mile, I would kind of have a limp, and then I would just kind of get my gait back and I would be fine. But the second I took my boots off, I was like limping. But like one thing I always told myself is, she who limps is still walking. And so even though, yes, maybe I wasn't always walking the best, I was still going north,
I love that quote. That is such a cool quote. And it's so interesting that and I think too, it's like that mindset. So you had those boots on, and then it's like, you have this goal, like you're not limping, you're just like pushing through. And then when you like take those boots off, it like gives you like, okay, like now I can relax. And then you start limping, right? That's so interesting. The mind is insane. Like how you can push through with something like that. Like your feet obviously still hurt, right? They're the same feet, it's the same condition. You've just kind of gone into that relaxation mode, and then you're limping. And that's, I mean, your feet, I'm sure you would agree, but like your feet are the most important thing on the trail. Like taking care of your feet is huge, because that is where is getting you from point A to point B. That's the only thing that's getting you there is your feet. And I'm curious too, so how many miles, like Because I think that would be great for like our listeners to kind of navigate as far as how far had you gone to when you got to your low point? How many miles had you hiked?
I mean, pretty
About.
far. I mean, that was like, I don't know where Massachusetts is up there. So, I mean, we were well over the halfway mark. So we were over, 1,000 something miles in when I had like the moment that I didn't think. Because I do think too, like in the beginning, I mean, it's like any big goal, in the beginning, there's like a lot of motivation there, and you're like just propelled forward by just like your excitement for this like new thing. But then there gets to be a point where it's like it's a habit, and habits are great, but they can get boring. Brushing your teeth every day is like not the most exciting thing, but we all do it, hopefully. Um, and I do think that there is something like in the beginning, I was like propelled really far just through like sheer like excitement and motivation and like new places and new things. And then it just kind of got to a point where I'd already like experienced so many things, and I was like, I don't need mosquitoes. Like this is it. Like I get it. I'm done. But I wasn't done. I mean, I'm so glad I kept going. But I do think it's a good lesson in like kind of waiting out those moments when you like really do want to quit. And realizing that like doing something, any sort of thing, like motivation can only get you so far, and then you just kind of have to settle into the boredom of the habit.
Yeah, and as a backpacker, like mosquitoes are the worst. Like especially like swarms of mosquitoes, you guys, not enjoyable. So I totally understand like why that like ended up being your low point. With hiking all those miles, with going through all those things, and then having swarms of mosquitoes. Not amazing, because you can't run away from mosquitoes. You can't get away from
No,
them.
you can't. And that was the other thing, is like I would look forward to like my snack breaks and things like that where we could relax, and I'd always put my feet up, and when there were mosquitoes everywhere, like those little things that I was looking forward to kind of get me through my day like went away very suddenly. And like I didn't want to stop and eat because you would just be attacked. And so you just kind of had to keep going forward. And so I lost some of like that like small motivation, like those small carrots that I'd given myself that had helped me get so far already.
Yeah, and those points of being able to like re-energize, like take that moment and re-energize. So, and perfect timing, perfect timing how you were at your low, and then you came to the spot where there's pancakes and you can relax and you're with your friends and yeah. So and in life, honestly, like in life, sometimes like we burn out on things. Like we've just pushed ourselves so hard, and the same goes for like what you had done. You had pushed yourself so hard and you were just like at that breaking point. It's so important to like give yourself, like when you're at that moment and you're just like ready to be like, that's it, I give up, I don't know what to do. And from the thing that you're trying to go for, to give yourself some time to like just take a moment, cry about it, yell about it, be on the ground about it, like do whatever you need to do. And then you're able to kind of like come back to those things. A lot of times like we suppress things and it just gets worse, but like on that trail it really makes you like bring all of that to the forefront, because you have to keep going. Like what do you can't lay there forever. Like you have to get to like the next point. And so it was perfect timing, and so awesome that your friend was like, hey, keep going. I love that she left you guys little notes. That's so cool. Like, hey, keep going, here's the carrot, it's a pancake. And food like that on the trail is amazing. Like food on the trail like just tastes so much better. I can't explain it, but like just things taste better. And so for it to be a pancake with syrup and stuff and butter, was there butter?
Oh yeah. Yeah. They did it right.
Just like that must have been the straight heaven too for you.
Yeah, and it was like a real shelter. Like so there's shelters throughout the whole AT. But most of them are like kind of like lean-tos, and so they have like one wall that isn't closed. Um, and so this one was like an actual like cabin, and so we got to like close the doors, and I actually did get a break from the mosquitoes. And so it really was like exactly what I needed at that moment to like propel me forward.
And talk
But
about like gratitude to the next level. Like we take for granted the door, right? We take it for granted, the roof over our head. But when you're on the trail, you're like, oh my gosh, this is heavenly. This is so lovely versus like, yeah, being out there and in a tent. You just appreciate things more.
I agree. Yeah, it really allows you to appreciate the little things for sure.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, you gave us a little snippet of like what helped you along the way, but let's dive into it like a little bit deeper as far as like for you to complete over 2,000 miles, like, and those lows, like what helped you to get through those moments?
Yeah, I mean, the people on the trail, you kind of mentioned like our friends leaving notes and stuff and motivating you forward, but you just meet some like fun characters along the trail, and they become kind of like your trail family. And I think just knowing that there's other people that are going through kind of the same misery, like self-imposed misery as you, is like very comforting. And again, those highs are like very, very high. Like you said, like going through the rough times really makes you appreciate those like small moments, like taking a shower after not showering for 5 days. Like no shower will ever feel as good. A peanut butter and jelly sandwich on a mountain, like trail food, it's so good. Or if you get to go into town and eat like at a restaurant, like wow. It's not ramen. That's amazing. And so it just makes you appreciate everything more. And I guess I mean also just like in my personality, I'm like pretty stubborn, and so I do think that helps me a lot in these kinds of things because um I mean if I was like being nice, I'd say like maybe determined, but I do think kind of like being stubborn really helps too. uh,
Hmm. And
just like
goal oriented.
yeah, goal oriented, like not like losing kind of that image, but also not being dragged down by your goal too. Like in the case of the road where I like the goal orientation helped me get through like 3 miles or whatever, but then the second I got there and it wasn't what I expected, I broke down and I lost it. And so being able to kind of like, you know, be goal oriented because that like gives you where you need to go, but then also kind of not be completely like hammered if it doesn't work out. um Somewhere in that middle ground.
Absolutely. Well, and two, yeah, like having that goal of, okay, once I get to this road, like that gives you that like forward momentum to keep going, to not stop. And again, this stuff like applies to life too. Sometimes it's just like getting over that hardship, getting over, and then for backpacking, like just getting over that hill, getting over that one mountain to then get to the next mountain or around that trail. I mean, I have not done 2,000 plus miles, but when, you're doing like 15 miles, like you're still doing that in some capacity at different times. And so like maybe you do have a blister, but you have to keep going because there is no other option. But again, like those little milestones, those little goals that you can set for yourself. And the same again in life, you have that big goal for yourself, set those little goals for yourself just to get over that hill, just to get around that bend, because that is what gives you that forward momentum. Will it look exactly like how we planned? No, just like for Sarah, it wasn't exactly how she planned. She had her moment. She grieved what she thought it was going to look like in her having you know, some space away from mosquitoes, but then having your moment, but then keep going because then you got to an even better moment of having a roof over your head and pancakes and swimming and friends and hanging out. So I love that. And what great advice for a backpacker, but also anyone, for what
Definitely.
helped you along. Yeah, for sure. So with doing this, right? So you complete it, like you complete this. What does that feel like? Like you just did 2,000 plus miles. You worked through the highs, you worked through the lows, you worked through the lows. I mean, you were about to quit, but you didn't and you kept going. What did that feel like when you got to the 5-month mark? I mean, you made it within 5 months. That's pretty badass. I'm not gonna lie. And you completed it. Like sometimes people quit it, and I get it, like, you know, to each his own, but you had completed this thing for yourself that you had set for yourself, and right before a wedding. I think that's hilarious, by the way. What did that feel like? What was that? Show us.
I mean, I think at first, I mean, obviously you're just so happy and it feels so surreal. And then you kind of feel like, I don't know, there's a lot of emotions. I feel like just finishing is like a roller coaster in and of itself. Because you've just pictured this goal for so long. And so I do think that there is something to be said for like a little bit anticlimactic, just because I mean, I don't know what you like expect there to be at the top of the mountain. I mean, there's a sign, you take some pictures. We had good weather, which was like amazing for the year that we hiked. But then you kind of like worry like, oh man, what am I going to do next? And all of that. And I feel like that was kind of the moment that I like really recognized it was about the journey and less about the goal, even though the goal helped me. I mean, as like corny and silly as that sounds, but it like truly is. Like when I look back at it, like getting to the top of Katahdin was like obviously great, but that's like it was like, you know, a few hours of a 5-month journey. And the things that I like most stand out to me are like those really hard moments followed by like just like the amazingness of you know, finding a gummy bear on the ground. Actually, we found in Maine, we found like a whole bag of gummy bears that someone had like left. And, you know, just like those like little things that you just like are unexpected. Those are the things that stand out the most to me.
I love that. Well, and too, yeah, I could just gummy bears. I would be super stoked on life about that, especially on a long trip like that. Like, yeah, I'd be over the moon. Um, and I'm curious, like I've heard this from long trip backpackers like yourself. Was there a point where you like came back, right? You finished, you completed. But I'd also like sorry, my ADHD is gonna come into play here for a hot second. Oh gosh, I lost it. Come back. um, yeah, no, totally lost it, I think.
You're saying like before, like you've heard other long distance hikers? No?
Yeah, but then I was gonna so with like going through those lows, right? And reflecting on those, I think it's so important for us. Like, you get to see what you're made of. You get to feel that confidence, like, hey, there was something super difficult and I struggled and I got over it. That's what I love about backpacking, is it really just helps with your like self-confidence, and it really shows you like what you're made of, what you're capable of. And with that, it's just like so empowering. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, like that's how like I think the AT made me better as just like a human, generally speaking, just because it did like it's I think doing hard things is such a great way to prove to yourself that you can do hard things. And I am so much more confident in my abilities now. I know I can make it through like really hard times. Like times where kind of like I mean, everyone has hard times in some capacity, but I feel like the trail specifically kind of strips away everything, and you're kind of forced to think about like food, shelter, and water, like the basics, and being able to make it through like all of the craziness that happened, and push myself kind of to the end despite not wanting to for a lot of it. I'm confident that I can do it again. You know, I'm confident that you could throw, you know, lots of weird things at me and I could do it, which I mean, not to sound like braggy, but it instills like I've done this hard thing before. I can do this other hard thing now.
That's why I'm like obsessed with sharing backpacking with women, because I started getting back into backpacking and like really like immersing myself and reconnecting with nature and rewilding myself when I had gone through a really difficult like life struggle. And I just was like, fuck it. Like, I'm just going to do backpacking. I've had a backpack for 10 years and I've used it at hotels, never actually on the trails. Like, yeah, here I am going into a hotel with my backpack, backpacking, and never used it on the trail. And then I'm just going through this really hard thing. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And like you said, it really, like, and regardless of how many miles you're doing, you really start to like unpack things about yourself. You really get to find out more things about yourself. Nature is such a therapeutic tool, and taking yourself and nature and combining those two and pushing yourself to your limit and seeing what you're made of and what you can go through and how you can be like self-sufficient for yourself. It really is just the coolest thing ever. That's literally why I offer this, is because it gave me so much and it's given you so much. And it's such a cool experience to have for yourself, whether you've gone through a really difficult thing, or maybe you're feeling like stuck in life, or maybe you're just struggling as a human. It really, I love how you said like it made you a better human, because backpacking has also for me like made me a better human. Like I just feel better within myself. I know what I'm capable of, and it's such an empowering experience. And so it's super addicting. We had talked in the beginning on this, on how backpacking is addicting, and yeah, it's just like you can't get enough of that high and just seeing what you're capable of and what you can do. So back to my question where I previously and then got super sidetracked. But I'm glad I talked to you about that. So with coming to the end of it, and in the past, I have heard when people have done very like extremely long backpacking journeys that, you know, they come home and like they might be excited at first, but then you almost like are a little sad and you're like mourning being on that trail. Now, everybody's different. Did you have like a place where you had like come home for a while and like you missed being on that trail and, you know, were kind of sad about it almost not being on there?
Yeah, I mean, I was glad to stop hiking at the time. Like I needed a small break from that. But it is, I mean, I mean, they talk about it with the Peace Corps too. And part of the reason I did the AT in the first place was because people, everyone talks about how like reverse culture shock is worse than like initial culture shock, like coming back to like America and like just, and I felt it. I mean, I remember when I came back from Tanzania and I remember going into a grocery store and I just like burst into tears because there were just so many cereal choices. Like the cereal option aisle was like very overwhelming to me. Having just lived in a country where the last 2 years, like I had the choice of like, you know, rice and beans and that's it. And so I think the AT kind of helped me get over that kind of reverse culture shock, because again, you're kind of like remote and things are like simple again. And so I kind of almost used it as a crutch to like postpone some of my reverse culture shock. And then but definitely like afterwards you do feel, I don't know, it's weird. It's weird to go from living in the woods to like living in society again so abruptly. Um yeah, I don't know. And you kind of like go through some sorts of like depression, and a lot of times people who hike the trail like they don't necessarily have like a plan necessarily for afterwards, which I didn't either. And so all of a sudden you're like thrown into like finding job and life and bills and all of that. And so there's definitely like I would say like the first few weeks I was like very happy to not be hiking, and then you kind of like reacclimate and your body like heals a little bit, and you like start to miss the trail. And I mean, I forever miss the trail. I mean, even now, like when I'm not on the trail, I miss it. And yeah, there's like always like a part of me longing to go back.
Would you ever do it again?
I would. I mean, I would like to do like other long distance trails. So my husband and I, we had planned on doing the PCT in 2020, but then the pandemic happened, and so we ended up doing the Colorado Trail, which is much shorter. But I mean, um, like it was like a wonderful, like beautiful trail. We loved it, and it was like the perfect, kind of month long, um, I guess, trail trail fix for us. And but we still definitely have like a lot of other long distance trails on our bucket list.
Heck yeah. Yeah. Once you get started and catch that backpacking bug, you definitely keep looking and keep going and finding other trails. I love it. So tell
Yep.
us, like, from doing this, what successes have you had after it? You talked about like your trail partner is now your husband. Like that's pretty cool. That's a success. But tell us like what successes and what accomplishments like after coming back from that you saw that translated like into your life.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I married my trail partner. We did through hike the Colorado Trail as well, which is that one we didn't do as well. I think we started like right out of the bat doing like 20-mile days, which I was thinking about it when you were starting and talking about how you should go slow, and we did not, and it was painful for a few weeks on like a month-long trail. Like most of it was painful because we didn't really like slow into it.
Mm-hmm.
But other things, I mean, I've done, since then, I guess I've gotten a few master's degrees. I've gone back to Tanzania a few times. I've done like like my own kind of like projects that I've like I did this solar digital library for Tanzania that it was kind of like a little um I don't know, side project that I did that was very hard for me, but I kind of kept going. And again, like all of those like moments where like you're just kind of in a really hard project or like a degree program that's just like never ending. I don't know, you kind of fall back to like, well, I was able to get past that day on that hill with those mosquitoes. I can like do this.
Oh gosh, I'm obsessed with that. Yeah, that is so cool. And it just, yeah, again, it shows you what you're capable of. And I love that you even like now, like in your day-to-day life, even during those hardships of creating something or something with work or whatever, that you can look back and say, yeah, you know what, this is hard, but I am capable and I can overcome this because I overcame a huge obstacle. So yeah, I love that. That's super cool. So tell us, based on your hardships on the trail and your successes, and like really like what you've learned, how do you think we can do better? Do better as an individual, do better as a community, do better as a society? How do you think we can do better?
I mean, I think if you have a chance to go after those big lofty dreams, like one thing that I hear a lot, like if I'm talking, like I can't even tell you how many times I'll say like, I was a Peace Corps volunteer, or oh, I hiked the AT, and someone will say to me like, oh, I always dreamed of doing that, and every single time I respond like, well, you still can, and the ones like those dreams that feel really hard or impossible are usually the most rewarding, and truly like just starting it is like 90% of it. um and just recognizing, like the AT was not rainbows and butterflies. It was really hard, like very, very hard, the hardest thing I've ever done. And I love a challenge, and I try and challenge myself a lot. It was very, very hard, but kind of like I was saying, like as a goal oriented person, I often focus on that goal, and really like I think that the goal is still like very important because it gives you kind of the path, but it is the path that is like the more important part. It's like the here and now, it's the present. It's like that's what's the journey is, whether it be on the trail or in life. Like you're going to struggle, you'll have challenges you overcome, um and all those challenges will just make you stronger, and do definitely, I think having a goal is so important to like forming your path, but don't get so caught up in the goal that you're like missing your like present in the journey that you're in the moment.
So, oh, such great advice. And also like doing those, like what you talked about on the trail, like those carrots, right? Like honoring
Hmm.
those milestone and those successes on the way to your big goal. Giving yourself like a lot of times, like we just have like this checklist of all the stuff we need to do. And we're like, hey, done next, day, done next, okay, done next. But when you like look at that and you're like, you've done the thing and you look at it and you're like, wow, I did that. That was hard. I did it. It really helps like propel you to keep going for that big thing. And it gives you a second to like let you reward yourself versus, looking on that list. And if you don't have everything checked, then you almost like guilt yourself. Like, I don't have everything done and I have to do all the things. But if you give yourself a little bit of those successes and honor those small successes, it helps you propel you to that big goal, to that big success. And also too, like you even talked about, like you envisioned yourself like laying on that road, like you envisioned your goal for you. Was it different than you expected? Yes, but you were laying on that road, which wasn't the road you thought about. But also too, like, does envisioning your goals help you?
For me, yes. Like I said, I'm very goal oriented, and I do think it's good to, like you said, give yourself carrots and like not think about the like if I started in Georgia and I only thought about getting to Maine, like I wouldn't have gone anywhere, like I got to that next lunch spot, I got to the next camp, I got to the next town. Like, so it is really like breaking it into smaller pieces, but not forgetting that like each step you're taking in this very moment is like what is propelling you forward. And so I mean, and I'm so grateful for everything that I've done in my past because it did lead me to like do these things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, like make your goal, make those small goals, and like actually just like get out there and do it. Like that's truly like the hardest part is like doing it. And like find that momentum. If you like really want to do something, like find a way to make it happen. Because you can. And those experiences, even if they like turn out to be completely different from what you expect them to be, like they'll probably be your best experiences, like those like things that are really hard. And that's the other thing, I guess, that's like another very good piece of advice is like have low expectations. If you like expect too much, you'll be disappointed. But that's like something that has come through with me so many times in the Peace Corps and while hiking. Like in the case of the mosquito thing, my expectations were not low enough for that road. I should have had lower expectations, and when my road didn't meet my expectations, I like completely was devastated. And so really go into like any big plans that you have, I mean, with at least try to manage your expectations.
Well, and failing forward. I always tell people like fail forward. If you're not failing at something, then you're not trying at something. It takes failure to have success. So we get so caught up in not failing in something that we forget that failing in something means we're actually getting closer to the success of that something. So keep failing, fail forward. And I love how someone was telling you, or multiple people I'm sure have told you like, wow, that's so cool. And then you're like, well, you can do that too. Because it's literally just average people doing really cool shit. But that is because they just do it. I love that quote where it's like the 1,000-mile journey begins with a single step, because it's just, and that's what you said, it's a choice. That single step, that's your choice into going for your goal. So taking that first step is really how you accomplish that big goal, that 1,000-mile journey. So just take that single step. Someone had told me the other day too, they're like, wow, like I'm jealous, like because of what the things that I'm doing, whatever. They're like, I'm jealous. I'm like, well, don't be jealous. You do it. You do the thing.
Exactly.
You do not have to be jealous of me or anyone else. Or like if you see something, you're like, damn, like I want that. Go get it. Right.
Yeah.
A lot of times we hold ourselves back from the failure and whatnot. But if you embrace that failure and you just do 1% better at something, or you just try something, that's where it's at. Don't be jealous of anyone, whatever. Learn from those people. Don't be jealous from them. See what they did to do the thing that you want. And literally it's that single step. It's just making a choice that I'm going to do it. And then from there, you start to do it and you fail forward and you stumble and you fall, but you get back up. So I love your advice. Thank you so much for that. Sarah, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we got to talk today. I super crazy nerd out when it's like a fellow backpacker and we get to like talk about things. I just get so excited about it. It's very cool. So I really appreciate you being on the show today. So thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, your story, and yeah, your highs and your lows. Thank you so much for being here today.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's been really fun.
Yeah, it really has been. So tell us if anyone wants to like connect with you, where we'll include links below, but where can people find you and connect with you if they'd like to?
So I try and keep my social media presence a little low just because I don't know if it's healthy for me mentally. But I do have a LinkedIn, and that's the best way to reach out to me. And Sarah will link my LinkedIn below, and feel free to friend me or message me if you have any questions or want to connect.
Yay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, and we will include that below. And again, Sarah, thank you so much. And thank you to you, the listener. If you have not subscribed to this show, you should. So go ahead and subscribe to that. And if you are interested in backpacking, my friend, let's do it. I work with women to help them start like doing the damn thing and start backpacking and having, these experiences of showing yourself what you're capable of and what you can do. And sometimes it is hard to start that new thing because it's overwhelming, because we're scared. We don't know how to start the thing or do the thing or what that looks like. But that's why I give this course, is to help those women, get that knowledge, get that confidence, and for us to start having those adventures and experiences, and we get to have them together as well with retreats. So I hope you come check it out. Sarah, again, thank you. But I'm gonna stop saying thank you and nerding out about that. But anyways, if you guys, much love, good vibes, and we'll see you later. Thanks, you guys.